Story 1. A couple weeks into my freshman year, I transferred into a more advanced science class. On my first day in the new class, there's a quiz. I asked the teacher if I was exempt from the quiz since it was my first day. She said no. I did well, especially for not having been taught any of the material. Here's what bugged me. The final question on the test was, "What country is the ticket from?" Of course, I got it wrong. The sentence doesn't even make sense. She wouldn't give me any clarification during the test, so once it was graded, I asked what in the world she meant. Turns out, ticket is her pet bird Ticket. For one, capitalize the name of your pet. Also, that's not an appropriate test question. I told the teacher I had no idea that it was her bird. She said, "Well, now that you know I'm talking about my bird, I'll give you another chance. What country is my bird from?" I was stunned that she thought I was now equipped to answer this question. I wasn't in class to hear her reveal where her bird was from. I guessed something like Chile. She says, "Wrong, it's Africa." Africa? That's not a country. I was so mad. She also arrogantly proclaimed every so often for the first few weeks if anyone spotted her making an error, they got an instant A for the year. I can't count how many times I busted her in class, but she never stuck to her word. Last of all, some random girls I didn't even know told the teacher I taught the bird swear words, and I got in trouble for that. I never said a word, much less swear words, to her bird. Story 2. In 6th grade, we had to write an essay at the beginning of the school year if we wanted to be on flag duty. There were 3 6th graders who were in charge of going outside and running the flag up the pole every morning and taking it down at the end of the school day. I had just come to the school the year before, and it was a very tight-knit small school, and I was a sci-fi nerd who was decidedly not cool. I knew it then too, and overcompensated by trying way too hard, which is the least cool thing you can do. I wrote an essay about how my father was in Vietnam, and the flag reminded him of home, how my grandfathers had gone to Germany and the Pacific in World War II, and what the flag meant, about my ancestors who fought under the flag and a different flag in the Civil War, and how 2 of my great-great-great-great-grandfathers had fought in the Revolution to establish that flag. I wrote about how from 13 stars to 50, through challenges within and without, my family had served their country. Regardless, I wasn't selected. You win some, you lose some. So at the end of the year, we are graduating from 6th grade and moving to junior high. This kid, Andy, who is one of the ones who was on the flag crew and was one of the cool kids, walks up to me just before the presentation and says, "Hey, you're going to get a certificate for being on the flag crew. We were supposed to tell you about the second week of school, but we didn't." As a kid who wanted to be a writer, I had spent the entire year thinking my persuasive essay wasn't good enough. But it was just this not wanting me to be there when he and his friend went out and did the flag. F you, Andy. Story 3. In 8th grade, my math teacher told me I hadn't turned in an assignment. A small enough thing, no? Well, I had done said assignment, but decided to do it again so that I could get the grade for it since he apparently didn't have it. And I turned it into the silly paper tray where we have to turn in our assignments. He refused to take them directly. Days pass and he pulls me aside again. "Where's the assignment?" he asks me. "I turned it in," I say. "I don't have it. You need to turn it in." At this point, I'm pretty irritated. But since he's stubborn and tells me to turn it in again, I do it yet another time and turn it in again. Weeks pass. This literally happened 6 more times. He still doesn't have the assignment and has been getting more and more angry at me every time he brings it up. I tell him that I turned it in and he should check his papers. He simply tells me I haven't turned it in and to stop lying to him. The entire grade is having a party to celebrate the upcoming graduation from 8th grade. I can't go since I'm missing the one assignment. Instead, I have to do the assignment yet again. I do it, he finally takes it with his own damn hands and not with the paper tray. Credit is given. A few weeks later, he's cleaning out his papers, all of them haphazardly tossed into milk crates. He says that we can't come and grab all of our papers that we've graded, since they and other things are in there. I go to look in the milk crates, and there I found 9 copies of that assignment total. Ungraded. sitting in random papers that were literally 2 feet behind him at any given time. I got shouted at for weeks over a single assignment that he never even bothered to look at, and wouldn't look for when I told him I turned it in. When I showed him the 9 copies he had in his own possession, he just looked at me and said, "Okay." Story 4. I took a computer programming class in high school, and we had network folders to store our work. One kid found my password on a slip of paper, given passwords that we couldn't change, and was stealing my assignments and changing the name. I had been helping him through the class, but didn't think anything of it. Well, in programming, it's very obvious if you steal someone's code, since the odds of you having the same variable names and methods to solve problems would be rare. I got called into a meeting with the teacher and kid, and she just started laying into us. She accused me of cheating, telling me she's going to fail me and report me for academic dishonesty, get me kicked out, and told me that I'd never make it in life and not to do anything, blah blah blah. I was completely blindsided. I had no idea he was stealing my stuff and turning it in. I tried explaining that I had no idea what she was talking about. She kept telling me I was a liar and stupid and wouldn't be successful, and just kept going on and finally said, "Never use me as a reference for anything." I'm now a very successful chemist in a very good company, and I'm still bitter that this teacher accused me of being a cheater and that I would never amount to anything because of it. Story 5. TLDR. My principal called my mom a bad mom, and my mom killed herself later. They're probably less connected in real life than they are in my head, but I am still mad. In grade 7, I was accused of writing something mean on the wall of the girls' bathroom stall. They determined it was me by doing an expert handwriting analysis, where they took a piece of my homework from class and compared it to the wall, and the U's looked the same. That's right, the damn U's. Arguably one of the least distinctive letters of the alphabet after the L, but that was enough for them to be convinced that I had done it. Somewhat ironically, just that very morning, I had gone in to pee during recess in a different bathroom, and someone had etched the word "f*** on the stall and then covered it in sparkly nail polish. I thought to myself, why would you even do that? What's the point? Anyways, I vehemently denied it. They brought my mom in, and she defended me, saying if I didn't do it, I must not have done it. The principal went off on my mom. I remember sitting in her office, and my mom was holding me, consoling me. The principal said, "I can't believe that you're listening to her when she is clearly lying." My mom stopped holding me at that moment and kind of leaned away, clearly embarrassed by the judgment brought upon her by this principal. This was in June. At the start of August, my mom killed herself. I know that she did it because she had a hard life and there were many things that contributed to it, but I still feel like one of the things that contributed was that moment in the principal's office. When she listened to this woman tell her that her 8th grade child was a failure, I can't help but think that my mom believed it and saw it as a reflection of her entire life. It makes me sick to my stomach just thinking about it. And I was only 13. I wish I could have told my mom that she was a great mom and that she would have believed me. I still get really angry when I think about it, but I get absolutely irate when I see that principal. I have often thought about confronting her and telling her how absolutely wrong she was about the entire situation, but I don't. I give her a scowl, and she probably thinks I'm still with that loser kid from the elementary school who would never amount to anything. I just think how much better my mom was. And she was, because she had faith. Story 6. 3 days or so before my term paper was due senior year of high school, I was working on it at my uncle's place. I had papers, notes, rough drafts, and the like spread all out over the table. I was alone that night, and there was an intense thunderstorm. Let me take you through the next 4 seconds. Tangible pressure change, lights go out, roof tears off, telephone poles, plural, rain down into the house. For the sake of relevancy, I'll skip the details of my obvious escape from death. Act 2. I tell my teacher my term paper was destroyed in a tornado. My suspicion was that it was the same one that destroyed my house, but sadly no usable prints at the scene. She never got my humor either. At any rate, may I have an extension? I can let you present yours last, but it's still due the same day. There was an oral component. How in the frenzied bowels of hell is that helpful? So now, fueled by illegally procured Ritalin and righteous loathing for the soulless c*** who's standing on the throat of my diploma, I write the whole thing over again. Act 3. The rule for the presentation was it must be 5 minutes or longer. No maximum time. I volunteered to present second. I presented the entire length of her class period and into her lunch period. She had to postpone every other term paper to a later date, essentially giving the entire class, save 2, an extension. I heard she died a few years ago. Now every time I see a rainbow after a storm, I know it's just God saying, "I made it right. She won't hurt anyone ever again." Story 7. A girl in 3 of my classes was allowed by the administration to have her cell phone during classes because her father was dying. I was aware of the situation since it was happening for a week, and she often had little breakdowns. One day in the first period, her phone vibrates while the teacher is talking. He disregards the fact that she'll be allowed to have her phone and demands she hand it over to him. I believe he said something along the lines of, "I'll read it, and if it's not your mother, then I'm keeping it," her phone, for the rest of the class, because it rang while I was talking. Well, the girl flips out and starts crying as soon as she sees her phone screen. She said no, she's leaving. This starts a standoff between the teacher and the girl. He ends up blocking the doorway while still demanding her phone. His logic was if he didn't know it was her mom texting her, then he can't let her leave. At this point, she's inconsolable, and everyone in the class is screaming at him to let her go. Like, "F your complex, dude, let her go." And he's screaming back, "I'm in charge here." To the point the class made so much noise that security came in to see what was going on. Security tells the girl to just go to the office. Her dad did die that day, and she wasn't in school for a month. The teacher had a leave of absence as well, and we had a sub the rest of the year. From then on, students were not allowed special circumstances for cell phones, and teachers were not allowed to block students from leaving. The real kicker is this was intro to photography, and most students were there because we had to take a mandatory elective. F you, Mr. M. You were a that poor girl who only wanted to see her dad one more time. I am mad just typing this out. Story 8. My 10th grade English teacher was going to law school, so she gave us tons of busy work, which I hated. One day she wanted us to study our spelling words, the whole period. I pulled out a book and started reading. When she said something, I told her I knew all the words. She pulled my chair out into the hallway and gave me a special Miss Smartypants test. She grabs her Black's dictionary and gives me 20 words/phrases to spell, like habeas corpus, which I remember because it's the only one I got wrong. A few weeks later, we had to write an opinion piece on any topic. We wouldn't be graded on our opinion, just grammar, spelling, etc. I had just been to the first casino in Atlantic City. My dad knew somebody. We got to stay on a finished floor in a really nice suite and play pretend games in the casino. No real money yet. My opinion was that the casinos in Atlantic City would be filled by mostly middle-class folks looking for a getaway. She wrote wrong all over it in red pen. Gave me a C. For my opinion. Fast forward 10 years, I'm a paralegal. My boss, annoyed by this attorney, asks me to take the call. It's her. My boss is on the line listening. She and I agree I'll get her interrogatories by Tuesday. Monday she calls, flipping out, then comes to the office. He tells my boss I'm a liar. I promised Monday. He said no, I was on the phone. Her face. Then I had to do it. I told her who I was. Karma is a beautiful thing. Story 9. Obligatory changed names forewarning. Chris was gay. Chris was somewhat flamboyant and did things like dress up as Lady Gaga for Halloween. Chris was bullied. A lot. Verbally and physically. Chris told his counselor. Chris told the security guards. Nobody, bar one security guard who moved to Japan, coolest security guard ever, did anything. It was always, we'll do the best we can do bullshit. So Chris decides that it's for the best if he has some way of protecting himself from his attackers. He brings a taser to school. He's bullied again and again, but never pulls it out. He knows it's a last resort tool only if shit gets real bad. One of the people, I would not call him a friend after what he did, who talked to him, decided to tell the principal that he had a small taser. I get that Chris should not have had a taser, but the fact that he was suspended for it after he'd explicitly asked for help and asked for his abusers to be punished? I'm seriously still miffed. Story 10. Went to a small private Christian school as a closeted gay kid. It wasn't different than most schools, just sometimes the teachers would put a religious spin on some things. One day in a high school social class, there was a discussion on sin and how it isn't always so black and white, and our teacher, a single 50-year-old woman, was asking for examples. One of my classmates raised her hand and started talking about how not all Christians think being gay is evil. Teacher didn't really say anything, and the class ended right after. The next day, we walked into class with the lights off and the projector open to a PowerPoint. On the slides are all the verses in the Bible talking about how gays are evil and abominations. And our teacher goes through every one of them, explaining to us that we can't trust gays because they are the scum of the earth who are trying to destroy the world, blah, blah, blah. The best part is that 90% of my classmates actually agreed with her, and this was only 3 years ago. I still get so upset when thinking about it. That teacher put me into a cycle of depression and self-loathing for most of high school. And people ask me what's my problem with religion. Story 11. When I was a sophomore in high school, this kid got really sick with mono. So bad he was hospitalized, and the principal announced to the whole school about this kid. He said if you wanted to make a card for him and his family, you could drop it off at the front office. Of course, this kid was an athlete and a popular kid. Well, about a week later, I was hospitalized with histoplasmosis. It's an illness that attacks the lungs and damn near killed me due to the treatment I was taking. Well, I got better and went back to school after about a month of being in the hospital and in a coma. When I get back, no one realized I was that bad off. I asked if the school let everyone know, and the school did not. It just bugs the shit out of me, because I knew just about everyone in my class, and no one knew I was in the hospital and could die. Not even one single card was sent to me. I cared, but didn't care enough to make a huge stink about it. What really pissed me off was my shitty English teacher, who failed me and treated me like shit when I got back. When she told me I would fail even though I had taken the final and gotten a B, I got up and walked out of her class after calling her shit teacher. I took the class over again during the summer, but that still pisses me off how I was treated differently because I didn't play sports. Story 12. The first math test of the semester. Did an extra step on every equation. God knows why, but every problem had the answer in the work, but an incorrect answer circled. Still got a 0. One kid who didn't even take the test had an unexcused absence for the day. The teacher made a deal with him for extra credit that would negate the test, provided he didn't have any more unexcused absences. I had perfect attendance, but no extra credit for me. Signed up with a tutor who helped me a lot. The lady was really a hero, but I still needed a crazy high score on the next test just to keep from failing. Me and the tutor studied like crazy. The teacher pushed the test back by a day and added more material. I wasn't confident about the material, but the teacher would not help me, and my tutor was unavailable until after the test. Just before the test, I came to the teacher's office and begged them to let me take the test a few hours later so my tutor could explain the new material to me during my off period. I cried and everything. Teacher said yes, but I still had to be in the classroom while everyone else took the test. Class starts, teacher passes out tests and says, "It's been brought to my attention that some of you are struggling with the new material. It was unfair of me to spring that on you with such short notice, so we're going to take the test as a class." Effectively guaranteeing everybody 100% I tried to pick up a test. Teacher grabs my hand and says I already made a deal and can't go back on it. Pretty much tells the whole class I was crying in their office. Made me sit there and watch everyone get handed an A. I took the test a few hours later and got a B+, still not good enough to pass, and had to retake it in summer school. Never took math again, at least beyond general education, and still hate it today because of that teacher. Story 1. My 6th grade class went to the 1964 World's Fair in New York City, and one of the mom chaperones lost Tommy. We couldn't board the bus home until he was found. The chaperone was crying and sobbing. Our teacher was furious and nearly all the kids were dying laughing. Well past our scheduled departure time, some official with a walkie-talkie told us Tommy was found and that the cops were driving him to our bus. We all cheered and jumped up and down. The adults were relieved. Our school bus was now the only one in the lot. A cop in a golf cart came. The kid was Tommy, but not our Tommy. Everyone gasped. About 10 minutes later, our Tommy showed up, all on his own, eating cotton candy and carrying 3 bags filled with souvenirs. Story 2. There was this nerdy kid that somehow ended up dating the most popular girl in school. And then he got super popular and went to the dance. And he did this crazy dance called the African Anteater Ritual, and everyone else started doing it too. Story 3. In high school, we had an organization called the Dad's Club. They would work the concessions at the football and basketball games, raise money for the school, do charitable events, etc. One day, I went into school and everyone was talking about how one of the dads that volunteered stole $5,000 from the Dad's Club. This was 1987, so that was a lot of money back then. A kid came up to me the next day and asked me if I heard who stole the money. I said no. He said it was my dad. I found out later it was indeed my dad. Story 4. In junior high school, one part of the school was evacuated because of a shark. It was actually a fetal shark preserved in formaldehyde in a glass jar that someone dropped when moving it from one science classroom to another. In high school, we had a near riot. The unlikely cause was a mystery movie being shown that turned out to be some kind of bizarre Monty Python movie. We had paid money to see this and didn't know what to make of it. Story 5. In grammar school, one of the lads, Donnie, found a trap door at the back of the metalwork classroom. He crawled into the space, and we shut the trap door and moved a bench over it. The teacher could not understand where the knocking noises were coming from. When we let Donnie out after 15 minutes, the teacher knew where the cursing was coming from. Story 6. All of the best crazy things came out of shop class. Probably the most notable was when someone was curious what would happen if they put their finger on an industrial belt sander. Answer: lots of blood. There was one time someone got caught with tobacco in his lip. The teacher called him out and told him to open his mouth, but he refused. So the teacher choked him until he spat it out. Oh, and we had a band teacher for 3 years that was known for his outbursts. The biggest of which, he threw a music stand at a student. Story 7. We had a game at lunch called Killer Bee. The object of the game was to catch a frisbee 3 times. Then you got to throw the frisbee. The catch was that there were upwards of 20 other guys out catching. Well, maybe 10 were actually trying to catch. The rest were otherwise occupied. It was like a mosh pit. The crazy part was that I don't remember anyone getting seriously injured, and I'm pretty sure no one actually died. If there are any other guys from the class of 78 reading this, they might be able to verify it. Story 8. Taylor County High School, Taylor County, Florida. 1983 or 4. We caught an armadillo around 5 p.m. on a Sunday. Stuffed it into an old gym bag. Monday, 6:30 a.m. Get on the bus with the gym bag. Lunchtime, 11:30 a.m. That armadillo had been in that bag for over 18 hours. It's North Florida in late August. It's hot, around 90 degrees. Our lunchroom was not big enough to hold all of the students, so there were 2 lunchtimes, but it was still very crowded. The armadillo shot out of the gym bag like a rocket, straight into the crowded room. You could tell where he was by the human wave left behind him. He might have weighed 20 pounds, and one that size has impressive claws. He was going so fast and it was so crowded that hardly anyone saw it, so they had no idea what was running around, bouncing off their legs. It was by far the funniest thing I've seen in my life. The armadillo even managed to escape. He was caught several days later and painted the school colors. Story 9. My Spanish teacher had been looking for a new home for her parrot, and the special education class had expressed interest. Almost everyone sat in front of their lockers in the morning before class. One morning, a parrot flies down the hallway at 7 a.m. Next, the entire special ed class comes full speed down the hall chasing it, happy as clams. The janitor ended up catching it in a set of double doors. Oh, and some guy into the hand dryers, then duct taped the buttons on. Story 10. We had a pep rally before some big homecoming football game. All seems to be going well, except for the bonfire they promised, then canceled. The crowd of about 200 high schoolers all start to notice that there seems to be commotion over at the football shed. Apparently, some staff and faculty had to detain someone in the shed until the police could arrive. Cops come. Two go in the shed. They come back out looking disheveled and in disbelief. Next time, a larger group of cops goes in. It took 4 officers to get this girl out of there, kicking, screaming, practically foaming at the mouth. And that, kids, was the first time Madison ever did PCP. Story 11. Some people were smoking pot on a balcony. They went inside. It was spring in the Southwest. Hot, dry, and windy. And little did they know that an ember caught on the couch. By the time they came back, the couch was blazing. Security had to throw the flaming couch off the balcony to keep the building from burning down. Story 12. The winter of 1973 snowed. A lot. There were drifts up over second-story windows, apparently. This caused a snow day to happen. This being Wisconsin, everyone got hammered drunk. I hear people were jumping out of 4th-floor windows to get out of buildings since the drifts were so high and they were so drunk. All of the alcohol in town was drunk by the students, since the roads were closed and shipments couldn't get in town. We didn't have another snow day until 2010. Wisconsin is awesome. Story 13. 4 kids on my basketball team fried their brains on paint cans and that chemical spray that you use to clean keyboards and electronics. It was weird because it happened before a playoff game. I was team captain, so I had to round up everyone. I found all 4 of them lying on the hotel floor mumbling incoherently. One had his face buried in his vomit, and the other 3 were a blubbering mess. 1 made a full recovery. 2 made slight recoveries. 1 has reverted back to the age of 12 and has been bouncing between group homes and mental hospitals for the last 4 years. Story 14. Home economic room in 10th grade. Some guy was arguing with his ex across the room. All during class we heard them arguing. Teacher was a small elderly lady, so she didn't say anything to them. Girl put on an oven mitt, took the metal grate out of a toaster oven, and went toward the guy like she was gonna burn him with it. Some other guy stepped in front of her to talk her out of it. As soon as he moved out of the way, the guy who was arguing with her threw a microwave across the room at her, hitting her in the face. All hell broke loose in that classroom after that. Story 15. Some kids years ago used to crap in discreet locations and wait until they were found. Like air ducts inside the pipes of the sinks. The dude got creative. Best one I heard was this one. He stole a copy of Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, hollowed it out, put crap in it, and returned it. Took the administration like 3 months to realize where the stench was coming from. He was never caught and has gone down in my school's history as the Phantom Pooper. Story 16. University student here. My school's student association ended up headed by some people who were mismanaging pretty much everything, including money. It's also been revealed that some members of the corrupted board have family ties to a previous board member who was found to have mishandled nearly $1 million in association money, and was at the time being sued. So there was a big movement on campus to have them ousted and banned from running for elected offices again. Student council meetings were heavily controlled, and some people were kicked out for questioning these people's actions. A vote was held to try and get them out. Group holding the vote sets it for a day in November, and the student association announces the date for the vote is in December. People trusted the group holding the vote more, so they got ready to vote on the November date. During the vote, someone released pepper spray inside. Fire alarm was pulled, and the whole building evacuated. Eventually, everyone is let back in. Voting is set to continue. Fire alarm is pulled again. When everyone is back inside, about 30 students take up the responsibility to guard the fire alarms. In the end, the voting was a unanimous decision to get rid of the corrupted board. They are escorted out by security when it's time for them to pack up their stuff in the office. Story 17. It happened during middle school. Mind you guys, this was on a military airbase in Germany, so nothing exciting really happened there. At the time, the high schoolers were allowed off campus for lunch. However, the middle schoolers were not. So, being at that rebellious age, many middle schoolers snuck off campus by jumping a fence. Well, during one normal lunch, the intercom goes off asking for some teacher, possibly the principal, to come to the office immediately. They forgot to turn the intercom off after the announcement, and all you heard was screams. What ended up happening is some group of kids decided to jump the fence to go off campus for food. However, one girl was wearing a ring which ended up getting caught on the fence. She ended up de-skinning her finger. Story 18. When I was a sophomore in high school, I had a professor that everyone likes that I'll call Professor X. Anyways, everyone loved Professor X. He was in his early 30s, got along with all the other teachers, and was laid back enough that he would joke around with the students without being awkward about it. About halfway through the first semester, he didn't show up to class. Then the next day, and the next. When we asked our sub about him, her response told us something was wrong. I'm not allowed to talk about it. Immediately after this, we all started asking around and looking for anyone who knew anything. This is what we found out. Professor X and his wife were going through a rough patch in their marriage, to the point where divorce was discussed. X did not want a divorce and thought up a plan to win her back. With the help of two seniors, he was going to stage a fake robbery and rescue her. On the day it happened, the seniors got in, duct taped her to a chair, and waited for him to come back. X ended up chasing them off, but the wife got out of the chair and called the cops before X could explain what just happened. I don't get his logic at this point. So, now our city has a manhunt for two 18-year-old guys, and they had no idea about the marriage problems and were led to believe that it was just a prank. After a couple of hours, both of the kids' parents were able to talk them down and turn themselves in. Professor X went on to run for a bit, but was caught, and last I heard, works in Dillard's. Moral of the story, be wary of any pranks you're involved in when you start duct taping people. Story 19. Okay, take your pick, ranging from tame to, well, not so tame. Can't verify everything, but these are what I heard. Math teacher had an affair with new female teacher, and she was made to quit, not him. Different math teacher threw a paperclip down my top and asked to retrieve it. French assistant, no older than 21, started screwing the 40-plus-year-old teacher she lived with. He rented a room to her, now in a happy relationship. Fat teacher had her lunch stapled to the staff room ceiling by other staff. The same fat teacher was taken for a spin in someone's new Porsche and then couldn't get out. Had to be cut out of it by firemen. Two girls got stuck in a soundproofed music room for hours after school had finished because the handle had broken off the other side of the door and there was no reception. French teacher got asked to leave after calling a black guy a monkey. Kid brought in a live grenade to school for show and tell. As for rumors versus truth, 1 to 3 I know are true. 4 and 5 were told to me by an ex-member of staff. I was friends with the girls who got stuck in the music room. I spoke to the head teacher about the French teacher leaving, and my boyfriend was in the school at the time the grenade scare happened. As for the chisel incident, I knew the guy who did it. Story 20. Not really at the school, but it's something a student did. We have a rivalry with one of the other schools in town, and years ago it used to be pretty intense. We had people break into our school and vandalize it. Vandalize the big T we have in the front, and brand their mascot into the turf field. It got to the point where a student here with a pilot's license took his dad's plane and TP'd the entire rival school and the neighborhood around it. Last summer, a student climbed on top of the school and kicked an air vent in. He wound up in the auditorium loft where we keep the old sets and props for drama. He signed his name in the dust on a chair and jumped down onto the stage. He left a few flash drives laying around, broke into a, thankfully empty, locked cabinet in the sound booth, and broke into the paint cabinet. Then he tagged the loading dock doors and left the auditorium. He went to the choir room and on the floor, then went into the band hall and broke through the door there. Story 21. I had a teacher a few years ago, let's call him Mr. R, who was quite serious most of the time, but occasionally could be laid back. One day, one of the boys, let's call him Mark, was asking all these unrelated questions to the lesson to try and get Mr. R off topic. I guess he decided that as he wouldn't stop, so he'd answer Mark. Mark asked him what fire looked like, and in response, Mr. R started dancing around and then rolling on the floor, saying, "I'm a fire! Whee!" and other fire like noises. It got recorded and put on YouTube, and he got fired the next week, so we all thought he was fired for inappropriate behavior or something. Story 22. In my senior year, my entire senior class came in one day, all riding Razor scooters at once. So we had over 500 people riding on scooters in the hallway at once. Some people would scoot by really fast and knock them over. I do remember being in the front of the pack as we entered the school. Some guy in front of me had the worst thing happen to him. A teacher came running out of the door and saw all of us coming in. And on pure instinct, the teacher clotheslines the guy like 5 feet in front of me. Story 23. We had this thing where the entire junior and senior class was brought out to the football field, where some firemen had positioned 2 horribly mangled cars. A bunch of drama students from our school got in the cars and pretended they had just crashed. They landed a helicopter on the field and had fire trucks and ambulances come in and take the kids and stuff. Pretty intense. The best part was that it was televised the next day. They were talking about how the students were so surprised and shocked by everything, and showed a picture of the local dealerinos at our school with his mouth open slightly, honestly looking pretty bored. The situation was pretty fun, and the guy got busted last year, I think. Story 24. When I was in college, some of our dorm supervisors decided to have an Easter egg hunt. My room was right next to a supervisor's office, so I learned that this would be happening. I also learned that some of the prizes would be really nice. So on the day of the Easter egg hunt, instead of going to dinner with everyone else, me and 3 of my friends stayed in our dorm and watched where the eggs would be placed. Then my friend had this great idea to write out little notes to place inside of the eggs once we had removed the contents. Once the supervisors went in to dinner with everyone else, we went around and collected the eggs and replaced them with notes. Then returned to our dorm to watch and go through the prizes. When the first people started finding eggs, the effect was amassing. We could see the people bringing the notes back to the supervisors. They looked more and more confused with each one. The notes said things like, "You snooze, you lose," or "Too late, sucker," or other things like that. Story 25. I went to private school. Had 2 other private schools come to campus for some religious event. Other kids decide to start fights, water bottles flying everywhere. Like 500 to 600 kids just throwing water bottles willy-nilly into the air. Saw a teacher just get clocked in the face with a mostly full bottle. Did not know what was happening. Bunch of AP kids decided to bully 2 other AP kids. One guy's parents' car got covered in cat food, ruined the paint job. The other got a watermelon full of plastic utensils and an M80 blown up on their lawn. This did go to court, and I believe a settlement was reached. Story 26. In German class, in year 7, we had an incredibly irritating and stupid teacher. One day, we had a room change, but the notice fell off the door, so the entire class was sitting in the room with nothing to do. The classroom had 2 doors, one on the outside and one leading to an inside corridor. We got all of the tables and chairs and barricaded the inner door like there was a zombie apocalypse. The teacher took 45 minutes to realize that maybe the students were in the other room. He tried to take down the inner entry but could not get in. He then took another 10 minutes to walk 12 meters to the other door. We all got detention, but it was hilarious. Story 27. It became a fad to carry a screwdriver and unscrew every screw. This was high school. It resulted in an assembly and the principal yelling at us, saying how he tried to open doors but the handle would come off, as well as other things.